Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Charlie Hunter in Bellows Falls, Vermont, where it is colder than it should be. It's March came in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. April comes in like a lamb and goes out like a mandrill baboon. May comes in like a mandrill baboon and goes out like a ring-tailed lemur. But we won't get into all that right now. Instead, it is time for what exactly was the round-headed kid who brings corduroy food up to this past month in the studio. I thought we'd go through a quick overview of exactly what I was doing and sort of how I catalog these things. So Betty Sue is down there in Austin, Texas, ladies and gentlemen. She is down there with her power and her heat and her high technology. And tonight she'll be doing her Nobody's Happy Hour. And I would strongly advise you, if you're otherwise unscheduled, join us at 6:30 Central Time, 6:30 to 8 Central. And it's always good fun. And it's always over at, you pay as you go. You can pay nothing or you can pay lots. Just go to Betty Sue, one word, Facebook page, and it has information about joining it. Anyway, and maybe she'll throw the link up in the comments too. Anyway, and I'm going to turn the comments on. Yes, there are people. Hi, people. So let us start. Betty Sue, the first slide, please. This is the Artwork Archive interface. And Artwork Archive is the database I use for cataloging my paintings. On balance, I prefer it to not having a artwork database. It is not perfect. It's a bit rigid, but it is better than anything else that I have seen. And if you look carefully, there's an inventory number that each painting is given, and that has proved tremendously helpful, because I sometimes have a bad habit of calling things like, Spring Study 3, and then it turns out I've done two paintings called Spring Study 3. And so it's very helpful to be able to look and see what painting I am actually talking about when I have called something Spring Study 3 multiple times, and then I can rename it. So anyway, each month, as I complete paintings or as I get fairly far into paintings, I enter them into the database. You'll see the top one is called the Mechanical Flagman. That is a picture of the painting as it exists now. The one underneath that is construction of the Arch Bridge, and that's the paintings on the easel. So it is a work in progress. But once I know that it's going to be a keeper painting, I do get it entered into the database. And I basically do it on an ongoing basis. And the system I use for my inventory number is CHART, as in Charles Hunter Art, then the year. So it's CHART, period, then the year, period, then the month, period, and then the number of paintings. So this shows CHART 210201 and CHART 210202. But there were 15 paintings for this month that ended up in the database. And let's go through them. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This is the Arch Bridge under construction. I have done several paintings of the Bellows Falls Arch Bridge. The Bellows Falls Arch Bridge was built in around 1900. Absolutely beautiful single span arch bridge over the Connecticut River between Bellows Falls and North Walpole, New Hampshire. And in 1980, the state of New Hampshire that owns all the bridges across the Connecticut River, because the state of New Hampshire owns the river up to the high water mark, they just declared the bridge unsafe and they blew it up, and the bridge didn't go anywhere. Then they blew it up again, and the bridge did not go anywhere. And then they blew it up a third time, and the bridge did not go anywhere. And by this time, each time they announced a demolition of the bridge, crowds of people were coming to watch and root for the bridge. And then the fourth time, they succeeded in blowing it up, and everyone was very sad. But anyway, I love the arch of the bridge going against the curve of the far hills. I like how we lose and find edges in the midst of this, and then how it gets very sharp and calligraphic down at the bottom. I believe this painting, when I got this far in the painting, I thought it wasn't finished, but then I've walked away from it for the month, and I'm now thinking it may be done or very, very close to being done. It's a 3 foot by 6 foot, and it will be in the show at the Brattleboro Museum later this year. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So we got fairly far along in that one early in the month. And then I met with Eric Aho, who is the curator. He's an excellent painter who thinks about art in fascinating ways. He totally intimidates me because he's so much more intellectual about art than I am. He lives in my town, and he is curating the show at the Brattleboro Museum, and we went through possible images. He wants to build the show around, the show is going to be called Semaphore, and it's going to be primarily railroad, but just some infrastructure. Images, a lot of verticals against horizontal landscape. And so that construction of the arch bridge he wants to include in that show. And we went through all the possible images, and he said, let's just, if you can do 3 more pieces in the next, for the show, I think we're all the way there. And he suggested 3 20-inch by 20-inch pieces. So this is the first of the 3. This is a railroad signal. It's called a mechanical flagman. And this is at Jones Crossing, New Hampshire, between Milford and Wilton, New Hampshire. And as a child, I loved this crossing because we called it the wigwag, because there's a pendulum that is behind that stop, listen piece of metal. And when the train comes, the lights, the red bulbs up in that black component start blinking in sequence back and forth, and the pendulum comes out and swings, and it makes a nice ding, 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 ding noise. It was very exciting as a child to see. And this made it, this photograph was taken in about 2000. They finally tore it down in about 2002, I think. But what I love about this as source photograph is that it's just all the angles are crazy. All those power lines and the railroad tracks and the road are all kind of pointing toward the central element. But then there's also the telephone pole behind the structure, and then this kind of yellowish pole in front, and then the crooked road sign. I love the unplanned vernacular aspect of this. And I did it in these browns, this kind of that kind of bronze sepia tone that I like. But then I'm going black with the structure where the lights are, and I am putting red in where the bulbs are. It's just those hints of color. Do I know when it was installed? I think they were installed in like the late, I think maybe the late 20s. The black that I'm getting, I'm using the same colors as the bronzy browns with the addition of ultramarine blue. So it's Van Dyke brown, raw umber, I think, yeah, that's just Van Dyke Brown and Raw Umber for all the browns. And then the black is the addition of ultramarine blue. The red is basically an alizarin crimson. And then I'm glazing transparent oxide red over on top of them, the bulbs, because I want the bulbs still to be visible, but I don't want them to overwhelm the structure. So anyway, that one came together quite well. And it led very quickly into how I wanted to approach the next two. So the next image, please, Betty Sue. This is a Semaphore on this old Santa Fe Railroad near Wagon Mound, New Mexico. That's Wagon Mound in the background. Wagon Mound is so named because it looked like a Conestoga wagon. It was a landmark on the Santa Fe Trail. And once people saw that, they knew they were finally getting somewhere, getting reasonably close to Santa Fe. These semaphores are the last remaining semaphores. I know this is supposed to be an art talk, and instead I'm talking about semaphores and railroad signals, but tough noogies. These were installed about 1910, and they're still in service. This is the last place in the country where they're still in service, and you see them from the Southwest Chief on Amtrak. They are going away even as we speak. Probably in the next 18 months, the last will be taken down. But boy, they're just another beautiful vernacular, beautiful piece of engineering that just I love how they look against the sky. Now, I was going for kind of an Edward Curtis. He did the romanticized portraiture of Native Americans about 100 years ago, or 110, 120 years ago. But so I wanted that kind of eulogiac, romantic view of the nobility of the signal against this resolutely horizontal landscape. I may do a bit more detailing on the railroad tracks on the left. I may not too, because it really isn't about the railroad tracks. It's a song about the signal. What do you folks think? More detail on the railroad tracks or not? I think maybe just darken the shadow lines of them a little bit more. But I don't think I want to put a lot more detail into the ballast or the roadbed or the ties or anything. Also, look at this, even though there is lots and lots of high contrast in this, of the structure against the sky, et cetera, there are I'm doing a lot of playing with edges, especially the base of the signal against the butte in the background. I'm trying not to spell everything out. I want the eye to fill in missing information. All right, okay, no more details. Great, that's less work for me. Okay, whoa, all right. Good to hear that. I'll tell Corduroy, because Corduroy was saying maybe a little more detail, but I'll tell her no. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This is my beloved hometown signal. This is a triple target signal, USS signal, United Signal Systems, United States Signal. This also is about 80 years old, I think. And these are now getting rarer and rarer. So it's 3 of these signals in a row. I probably, if I was to do this again, I would have a little bit more of the top of the third of the targets visible. Now, I initially did this in brown, in that same brown as the Mechanical Flagman and the Edward Curtis Semaphore, and it just didn't look right. That brown isn't really what Vermont in February feels like to me. So I glazed on top of the brown with a mixture of Payne's gray and unbleached titanium and a little bit of titanium white and a lot of Cobra painting medium. So you'll still see some of those warm browns in the line of the hill in the background. But then I'm going, and you'll see the warmth of those browns in the sky, especially the lower part of the sky. And if you look at the dark form in the foreground toward the left, that I just did a light glaze on top of the brown on that, but then I darkened it as I went over toward the right. I'm actually very happy with the various contrasts in this. I really like the weird little poles around the base of the signal. I'm surprisingly, I generally dislike my paintings when I get them done. And this is not as tight as I often do paintings. But yet I am quite happy with this one. It has the feeling I want. There may be bits of rendering that aren't quite as good as I can do, but the feeling that I want, it feels truthful to me. And I really like the way I did the tree branches right behind the signal and to the right of that light pole. So they come up above the horizon line of or the ridge line of that hill, but they're not overly detailed. And I'm pretty happy, I'm pretty darn happy with that hill too, I must say. All right, next slide, please, Betty Sue. And then there are a whole lot of these, ladies and gentlemen. There are a whole lot of bad watercolor studies. I am taking an online year-long watercolor class with Andy Evenson, and I am learning a lot. And when you are learning, you do a lot of bad paintings. So I don't do every day, but I certainly try to do the majority of the days of the week. I do try every day to either do a suite of watercolors or do some drawing from life, go out in the car and sketch in my sketchbook. So I'd say in February, I did probably 18 days of doing three not very good watercolors, and I did 10 days of sketching. So about an hour, maybe a half-hour sketch, and about an hour and a half bad watercolor. Learning a lot in watercolor, and I am utilizing what I am learning in the watercolor in my oil paintings. These don't look like Andy Evenson paintings, but I'm not trying to paint like Andy Evenson. I just want to learn the watercolor vocabulary. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So this is typical, not typical, this is, I was very, very happy with this painting. This is using Cobra water mixable oils, basically in the manner of watercolors. So the first pass I did was, this is Van Dyke Brown and Ultramarine. I think that was it. I think it was just those two colors. And so very, very watery. And this is on muslin mounted onto a masonite panel, okay? And then 3 coats of Amsterdam acrylic gesso. So just with the chip brush, this was done with the chip brush. That is the crappy, 2-inch brush that you get at the hardware store that sheds for the first month until you start till all the hairs that have wanted to shed have left. So I just did the sky in, I think I did the sky second, actually. I think I first just did, using almost just the side of the brush, that brush stroke coming in from the right that we read as a tree line, and then what we read as bare field with snow covering it, transitioning over to the darker side. I think that was all really one brush stroke. Then maybe the next And because it's so watery, it's set up almost immediately. And I brushed in that very light tone in the sky. That is just an extremely watery mix. The tree and the massive trees to the right were done the next day, using basically the massive tree, I mean, to the left. The massive trees to the left is out of the tube thickness of Van Dyke Brown applied with a palette knife, and then a little bit of dry brush. And then the gnarled undergrowth tree in the foreground is it's using a rigger brush and a puddle of Payne's gray. Oh, that's what it is. It's not ultramarine blue. It's Van Dyke Brown and Payne's gray. That's what I'm using here. So a puddle of watery Payne's gray oil paint and a puddle of watery Van Dyke Brown oil paint, and they intermix a little bit. And I'm just applying those branches with the rigger. And this one, it took literally, I think all told, probably 45 minutes to do this painting. And I sent it to Betty Sue saying, it feels illegitimate. I'm very, very happy with it, but it feels illegitimate because it was so quick. And she was like, it took you 45 minutes and 25 years. So I have let it be. And I am actually very happy with this painting. No, this is oil. This is oil, James. It is using the techniques I've learned from watercolor. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So we have a series of, this is all exactly the same technique done over, I did maybe 8 of these panels, and I am still adapting them and working with them. This is just, again, totally watery in the sky. I'm trying to remember the order I did these. Maybe I did the sky first and then the brush strokes, but it's all very, very quick, and I am not working from any photographic reference in these. If I'm working from photographic reference, I'm going to get tight, and I'm going to try to dictate what the marks are. And if I just am working with the memory of various landscapes in my mind, it goes much better. This one I call Porter 2 because in my childhood in Wethersfield Center, Vermont, we had a porter, which was it's a sweet apple tree. Most apples are sour is the wrong word, but they're not a sweet apple. A sweet apple isn't actually a very good eating apple, but it's very good for cider. Very good for putting in a mixture of apples for cider. So we have this one porter tree out in our field, and this looks a bit like when you approach that tree, and then you're looking over on the right-hand side is the valley of the Black River Valley. So it's reminiscent of, it harkens to something in my childhood, but it is a pure painting. This one I would say is about half as successful as the previous one. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This is another one. So you'll see the sky in those 3 paintings, very, very similar. I have softened the kind of cloud form, and I may continue to soften it a little bit by dry brushing white slightly. It's very, 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 very slightly warmed white. Dry brushing it over the harshness of the negative space of the brush of the sky. So it's still, it looks a little, it's still a little too hard-edged up there, the cloud against the sky. But what I really like about this is letting the horizon line go. And so again, I'm using the device of a mass of trees to the right, a mass of trees to the left, a small, foliage line over on the right, and then a device in the foreground over like in the lower right, where my signature is and stuff, to just, and then like a track. I'm thinking of when we cross-country skied in the third mowing. We had 3 fields, or my family still has, this is the farm that was, the place that was built for my great grandfather, who was the 2nd settled minister in Wethersfield, Vermont. And this is the 3rd field. But the device of the shadowy area in the lower right and the line of the ski track going to the big massive trees is just the device to carry the eye to that point where the field and the sky, I just want there to be contrast there, but I want there to be so little contrast, So all of these are 9x12s. I have a whole bunch of these 9x12 panels with the muslin on them. So I've just been experimenting and experimenting and experimenting. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This one I sent to Betty Sue when I did the initial playing around with it, and she said it doesn't work. So I played around with it some more, and now I'm pretty happy with it. This ends up looking like kind of one of those romantic Western, like if Frederick Church headed out to explore Montana. I don't know. You may see some squeegee work here, but the whitest whites of that river in the middle distance, let's call it a river, those whitest whites, they ended up looking like a river to me. That is just the substrate. That's just the gesso. So it's very transparent. The initial passes were with that Van Dyke Brown and Payne's Gray, and then I've done a bunch of glazing on top of it. And I'm using a little tiny bit of like permanent rose mixed with unbleached titanium in a glaze to make that far hill have that very, very slight roseate tint to it. But I'm really happy with how unforced this landscape was. There are things I do not like about it. I don't like all of the marks in the foreground, but I am happy enough with it that I will let it go. Because I do like how seemingly detailed it is, yet I know honestly that I did not overwork this. So I like the story this tells. Next one, please, Betty Sue. So you guys all saw this one. We did a forensic on it when I was doing the did the fun with encaustics. This was a battlefield, and it is now sold, ladies and gentlemen. It is sold. It was just a squeegee mark, a watercolor squeegee mark, and then I put encaustic on it, and I glazed it. And that was fun. And that's all I have to say about that, as far as Scump would say. Sold, correct. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, if there are individual pieces that you are interested in, always feel free to drop me a line, and deals can be had. Deals can be had. Next one, please, Betty Sue. Here we have corduroy looking, as Betty Sue and I were saying, looking kind of like, I can't eat this steak. You have any banana pudding? That's what Betty Sue was saying that corduroy was looking like. She's not that toothless. She's missing a few teeth, but anyway, she's looking. I was leaning paintings against her. And she was really, she would have preferred snuggles, but she put up with having paintings leaning against her. This is another one of those super simple watercolor squeegee marks with encaustic on top of it. And this is, it gives you a sense of the size of these little watercolors. They're smaller than a cat. The frame is a custom floater that my friend David Putnam does for me up in Claremont, New Hampshire, Claremont Custom Framing. I really like it because when you do the encaustic, it leaves a rough edge on the wax. Is not a absolutely uniform edge on the side of the panel. So you can still see that roughness. The floater allows you to see that roughness. But so it's very, very small. It's about, like 4 inches by 7, I think. And just super simple. I'm going to have a whole series of these little encaustic watercolors that'll go in my next show. Yes, and the Sharpie is what I write the title and the inventory number on the back of the frame with. She is very supportive of my artwork. That is a dreadful pun. Next one, please, Betty Sue. This is the Bellows Falls train station. Little 8x8 for the lighthouse. I'm taking part in a plein air event in Tequesta, Florida, a virtual plein air event. And we all had to do little 8-inch by 8 inches and send them down there. This is using kind of I was keeping in mind all that stuff I've been doing with the oil paintings in the manner of watercolor, the 4 that we looked at earlier. But this is pure oil paint. And I actually simplified that railroad signal is the one with the 3 targets, and I simplified it just down to a single target because I'm lazy. Next one, please, Betty Sue. These are fun. These are 6x12s, and I bought some Blick wood panels that are cradled. So cradled wood panels. The problem with a thin wood panel is they warp really easily. So these have a nice sturdy hardwood cradle that they are glued to. So it's nice and rigid, and you can display them without any frame at all because the sides are so substantial and so clean looking. So what I did with these, I wanted to play with all the squeegee marking that I've been doing, like this was a battlefield, and that last one that Corduroy that I had leaning against Corduroy, which is really letting the squeegee provide that graduated tones and stuff. Now, how do you do that? Conventional acrylic gesso it's not really toothy, but it has a bit of tooth. So I went to the hardware store and got a quart of semi-gloss latex enamel. And I put down several coats of that. And then this is just squeegee fun on top of that. And I was using a sketch I had done down at Harlow Farm, where I do lots and lots of winter sketching. That was my jumping off point, but I was not literally transcribing. I was not doing a literal depiction of that landscape. But I'm very happy with the atmosphere of this. Some of the lines I'm not crazy about, but the atmosphere feels right. So this is a little 6x12. I do enjoy browsing old newspaper images. I am an avid member of any number of Facebook groups where I can waste huge amounts of time. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So this is another 6x12 on the Blick cradled wood panel with the latex enamel. So it's a semi-gloss latex enamel, hard. And so it's not absorbent at all. It will stain, and then you just kind of try to build images off of the fugitive marks that are left. This is not, I don't think this is a towering work, but I'm happy with the wintry atmosphere of it, and the suggestion of landscape, even though there is very little that is in any way literal in this. But I like how the eye is trying to make sense out of this. And to me, the line in the bottom third, not the foreground line, but the line behind the verticals, that kind of muddy gray, the way it is, the line is there and then it gets blurred out and then it reappears and then it blurs out. Our brains are so busy trying to make sense out of what that is that, a fence line with some underbrush and then a real heavy line of trees behind it. I don't know, but I sort of believe it. Next one, please, Betty Sue. Oh, yes. And then I went out with the Putney painters. We went out one day and did some frozen ass painting, ladies and gentlemen. I used to run a week-long painting get-together in March that I officially called Charlie Hunter's Sugaring Season Paint Out. And we'd visit a maple sugar, a sugar house, and I'd show people how maple syrup is made, et cetera, et cetera. But all the people who did it just referred to it as the frozen ass painters because it was cold. So I no longer do that because I'm now a lazy bones. But a bunch of us Putney painters got together and went to Riverview Farm, and I set up right next to the dumpster, which is where I like to set up, and using the back of my Honda Element, painted away for the afternoon with my little friends. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. The first little painting I did was called Danny's House, because my friend Danny Lichtenfeld, who you all met in one of the earlier Reasonably Fine Art talks. He's the director of the Brattleboro Museum. He lives in this house that is on the Riverview Farm property. In fact, that was what I was oriented toward when I was set up there painting. So this is about a 45, 50 minute. This was my warm-up painting, 6x12 muslin on gator board. Just again, my usual Van Dyke Brown raw umber mixture for paint. Not a great painting, not a terrible painting, perfectly fine for my warm-up piece. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This was the second one I did. This is an 8x16. Then I did a very stupid thing, ladies and gentlemen. A very, very stupid thing. I should not have done it, but I did it. The lighthouse, both Danny's house, I think I sent Danny's house. No, I didn't, no. But Lighthouse, we had to send 3 pieces down to Lighthouse, the Lighthouse Plein Air. So I sent that little 8x8 at the train station. And then I sent one that I did in 2019 of a snack bar in Essex, Massachusetts for Cape Ann Plein Air. And then I sent this one, but I didn't have an 8x16 frame handy, ladies and gentlemen. And so I took my box cutters and I trimmed this down, and now it's not as good. Now it's 8x12. I cut off some of the left and I cut off some of the right, and it's not as good. But so it goes. It's not a perfect world we live in. And if that's the worst problem I have, I'm pretty darn lucky. But this was the second painting I did with the Frozen Ass Putney painters. This was just a farm shed. So my first painting was done looking this way, and my second painting was done looking this way. I didn't have to go driving to look for a second thing to paint or anything. In fact, what Stuart Schill says that he has wasted more time driving around looking for where to set up and paint, and then sets up and paints a painting and then looks over there and says, oh, there's a painting. And then looks over there and says, oh, there's a painting. I mean, paintings are everywhere. It's just we don't dare leap in, you know. Yeah, who said no? Catherine Fisher. I know, Catherine, I'm stupid. Masia, my Polish friend. Yes, I did receive, like 3 days ago, I received mushrooms. At least I assume it's mushrooms. They're sitting right here. So yes, they have arrived. They have arrived. Thank you. Let's see, where was I? I was talking about, that I then chopped this painting down. So now it's down in Florida and it's not as good as it was. Yep. Next slide, please, Betty Sue, or is that it? That's it. Yeah, so anyway, so that's the paintings of the month. Hopefully that has kind of explained how one thing leads to another. You know, I started with that great huge construction of the Arch Bridge for the show. Eric and I met. He suggested I do these 3 paintings of signals. I did those 3 paintings. Those 3 paintings of signals are going on throughout the month. I'm doing those watercolors as constant exercises, which then inform how I am doing experimental paintings. The experimental paintings, some of them become encaustic, some of the oil paintings I'm just doing as pure oils. The watercolors are becoming encaustics. I'm thinking about how I can, those encaustic watercolors I'm doing with squeegee marks. I'm thinking about how the squeegee mark can get translated to an oil painting. So that caused me to do that, getting the cradled wood panels with the enamel, you know, and then I'm doing starting to do the regular plein air paintings. But all of it is, the paintings are all different, but they are in a way all of a piece as well. And I would really encourage all of you guys to just experiment, change things up constantly. Don't try to hit home runs. Just try to get on base. But you know, I have 25 bad watercolors for the month. But that informed 3 pretty good oil paintings, you know? So it's all just trying and trying and trying and trying not to do the same thing over and over again. I think that's enough blathering from me today. Plans for March? More of the same, Edward, more of the same. All right, everybody, you guys take good care. Oh, one thing I was going to say. I remembered to do an Instagram post about this. I have over at www.hunter-studio.com under the store tab, I've got my 3 books. These are my 3 books of paintings, 8 inches by 8 inches, about a dozen paintings in each one. There's 2018, there's 2015, and there's 2013. And they're $20 each, or I'm running a special, all 3 books for $50. So if you want one, you also get a reasonably fine artist sticker. And maybe if I get some more Studio Cat Corduroy stickers, you'll get a Studio Cat Corduroy sticker too. So anyway, head on over to hunter-studio.com and maybe pick up a book or 2. All right, take good care, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.